All right, I think we are online now. Hello, everyone. This is the next episode of Liferay dev.life online sessions, which is the sessions brought to you by Liferay from developers to developers. We're sharing you cool technologies and how to use them and how to be more productive as a developer. Today is an interesting session about front-end stuff. So those of you who are great fans of CSS and stuff will be very much enjoyed to see what Chema has to show us. Those of you who don't know who is speaking to you, it's this guy down here. My name is Milan Jakov, and I'm developer advocate at Liferay. Me and the developer relations team are the ones who are bringing the sessions to you to help you, as I said, be more productive, which has always been the goal of Liferay, to help developers. And for those of you who don't know more about Liferay, I highly recommend you to go on our community, liferay.com projects, where you can see all the projects that we've been working on and more information about what each project is about. And among other things, you will see Clay and Lexicon, which are the projects that we will be covering today. Okay, for those of you, like most of you probably came here from the dev.life meetup where we signed up. If you're watching this recording later on, this is the best way to sign up for and be notified about for future sessions. Just go to the dev.life meetup and register there, and we'll be notifying you about future events. You can also join our meetups in different countries, not only in Europe, as you can see in the picture, but all over the world. Enjoy live sessions, like real life in some office or some nice place. Like, for example, the upcoming session in Budapest. If this is somewhere near you, there is a session about MongoDB going on May 3rd. And there's also other sessions, like, for example, Spanish user group is organizing a session once a month, and they even record all the sessions. So even if you don't make it to their meetups, you can still watch the sessions online on YouTube. Liferay Agora. I'm not sure how to pronounce that in Spanish. Anyways, for this session, as for every other session, we want it to be interactive, and there's two ways you can contact us. Like us, it's me and Chema, which I'm going to be introducing in a second. That's the chat next to the window that you are watching right now. And also there is the Slack channel, and the link to which you have on the screen now, and you also have it in the comments below this video, so you can click on it right there. I'm going to be monitoring the chat and all the questions or notes that you guys post here. I'll pass them to the speaker at the end of the session. Obviously, if there is something wrong, like you can't see the screen or you can't read it or the font's too small, just let me know in the comments and we'll fix that for you. Okay, that's enough introduction for today. Let me move to the session of today, which is building modern and consistent user experiences with Clay and Lexicon. And I got for you the best person to explain this, which is the principal front-end engineer at Liferay, Chema Balsas, who is behind those projects and who hopefully will show you how great those are. So, Chema, hello, you with us?
Hey, Milan. It's good.
Hey, good to have you.
Thank you.
All right. I'm passing it to you now. Good luck.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so hi, everybody. And thanks for being all the way over there on a Friday afternoon. I don't know about you guys, but here in Spain, we have beautiful weather. It's springtime already, so I'll try to make it short and brief so we can all go enjoy some tapas and some siesta. At least that's my plan for after this. So, okay, so I was hoping for a more intense introduction from Milen, but nevertheless, let me say. So now, I'm sharing my screen. Okay, so let's jump into it. So today the session is called Building Modern and Consistent User Experiences with Clay and Lexicon. We might not be doing that completely, so don't get fooled by the title. First of all, a disclaimer: this is not going to be a talk about Liferay portal per se. So I hope I won't be disappointing anyone here. I've given you some links there at the bottom of this slide where you can actually go and find some more information about how the technologies that we show today are actually going to be introduced or implemented into the Liferay portal project. So if you're interested on that, you can just check the Liferay portal site where you can find a lot of information, and we're already publishing some information for the 7.1 release. So that's where Clay will make its debut in Liferay portal. So you can find more information here in our Liferay portal site. So if you're curious about it and you want to know more about how you can actually leverage Clay inside Liferay portal, that's the way, or that's the place to go. If you have just questions in general, please do use the forums or Slack channels available for that. We're usually monitoring them and trying to answer as much as we can, so don't be shy. And I wanted to say this to make sure that because today we're going to try to focus on a more general aspect of these libraries. And the biggest topic for me today, or the biggest thing I wanted everyone to get away with, is trying to find some clarity into all these terms that we usually drop when we're talking about our technologies, right? So if you've been following us for a while, you've probably heard the words Lexicon and Clay. Well, at least those two you must have, because you're here already. But you may have overheard others like Meta.js, Bootstrap, Lexicon, CSS Material Design, Closure Templates, Atlas, JSX. So there's a lot of terms that from time to time appear, and it's not always clear what's the relation to one another. So I'll try to also shed some light today about this, and hopefully we'll all have a better idea of where everything we're doing in terms of technology and in terms of projects, where everything stands. So just a bit of history, because we've been talking about this for a while. So if you know Liferay, or if you've been following us for some time, I've given you here some links to some interesting videos that can help explain some of the decisions made over time, and also where we're coming from, and see a little bit of the direction we're taking. So 2015 DEF CON, Juan Hidalgo already, I think this was the first session where we actually introduced Lexicon as a thing. So it's a very interesting talk where Juan will explain in detail what were the motivations and what were the underlying principles for developing Lexicon and what it is. So just check it out if you're curious about it. That same year, Mayra, also at DEF CON, was introducing Meta.js for the first time. And it was also introducing something that we called at the time the crystal components, just trying to use that connection to metals and primitive materials. If we move forward for a couple of years, this is 2017, last year, Victor was showing the Lexicon evolution. So this is at least 2 years we had been working on Lexicon and evolving it, and a lot of good things came out of that. And the same way, we also tried to talk about what happened with Meta.js, what was happening at the moment, and what would happen in the future. So with all this, what I wanted to highlight is that all the work we're doing, all the projects we show, they're a work in progress, and we're usually very eager to show them to you and to share all what that we're doing. And sometimes that causes some confusion because we try to jump in too early, or we're excited to let you know what we're doing. We might drop out some words and maybe some comments or some ideas that are not maybe 100% ready. So then with time, we need to make some changes, some switches, or adapt the messaging a little bit. And we know and we acknowledge that that has caused some confusion in the past. So if you've been using Liferay Portal for a while, and I know this is not a Liferay Portal session, but just in case, there's a distinction between what we used to call Lexicon in the past in Portal in 7.0 in the current release, and the way we're approaching this for the future. And this will all be explained during the session, but just in case, there's the old site of Clay or Lexicon that you can go to, and then you'll have also the old links so that you can keep working the same way you were, or you have the new links, and hopefully the relation between them is more clear. So I think we can just go straight ahead. The two main topics we have for today are Lexicon and Clay, right? And I think at least good news regarding the previous thing I was talking about is that both are stabilizing, both are converging to a clear messaging, and I think we don't expect any more changes or fluctuations in the future. So hopefully now being clear about this and having a clear message will help knowing where we stand and what can you expect from these two projects in the future. So the first thing, Lexicon. What's Lexicon? The way we define it in just one sentence is an experienced language for crafting beautiful UI. And that's pretty much everything that Lexicon is. You can go to the Lexicon site, which is a very beautiful site where the team has made a very great effort into documenting everything, all their thought processes and everything that Lexicon actually contains. So I'll just skim through it very quickly so you have some ideas on the site of what you can find and how it is, or how to navigate the site. And then, as you can see, you can find some design principles, which are the basics or the foundations of what Lexicon is. Then you have some patterns, and then you have some news and extra resources. So Lexicon is, after all, a guide to design principles, components, patterns, and context of use that contributes to give consistency and coherence to your products. So it's just a guidelines. It's just a way to express or to document good patterns, proven usability patterns that we've analyzed over the time, and we've discovered which ones work and which ones doesn't through user testing and different user experience techniques. So now we're putting them together in a set of documents and guidelines, so that when you and ourselves are actually developing your applications, you can just follow them and make sure that your applications won't get into any usability fault traps. So as I was saying, Lexicon is just a set of principles and patterns, and just some tools to create and to use a common design framework, which you can use to build your applications. It's very tailored to the Liferay ecosystem because that's where it stems from. So it's been designed, or it's been developed with Liferay's internal needs at head, right? So that's the first goal that Lexicon is trying to solve, or the first problem it's trying to solve. It's internal for Liferay. So we want to make sure we have a consistent way to build our applications and to make sure they stand consistent between each other. So when you're going from one to another, it always feels like you're still inside the same mindset, and then you can find the actions you need to do, or you can get things done in a common way, in a coherent way. So you can think of Lexicon as some kind of blueprint, right? Or as a Lego manual. So he's just telling you how you could do things or how you should do things so that in the end they look and they behave in a specific way. So it doesn't mean that you cannot do things in a different way, right? So, but if you just follow Lexicon, then you'll get a result that we consider it's a good one, and it's one worth exploring and worth pursuing. So I think the biggest takeaway from this is that Lexicon. So if I were to use a verb to explain what you can do with Lexicon, it won't be used. So Lexicon is not something that one can actually use, but it's something that someone can adopt, or something that someone can follow or implement, right? So it's not, it doesn't make a lot of sense to say, are you using Clay already? Are you using Lexicon already? Because Lexicon is not something tangible, something solid that you can actually take and put somewhere. It's just something that you can, that you need to understand, that you need to make it your own, and then that you can actually follow or adhere to those principles. So I guess by now, probably you're drawing the connection between Lexicon and maybe other things or other similar experience languages out there, like material design, or, well, pretty much every company out there these days have their own. And the reason why is because most of them have realized how their products have been evolving over time. And here I just got from the internet some screenshots of how Liferay Portal, our biggest product, has evolved over, I think this would be the span of maybe 6 to 8 years. So you can see the big difference from version to version to what we have today and what we'll have in the future. So this, while change and evolution is good, it also has brought us some issues in the past, or some problems where not everyone is comfortable with constant and quick change. And sometimes because you're forced to relearn the patterns over and over, and you're forced to just adapt to a new change that you didn't ask for to begin with. So Lexicon for us is trying to work through this need of evolution and make it more controllable, or make it in a way that we can actually control, and we can make sure that the way we evolve over time is sustainable and maintainable. So as Lexicon matures and evolves and stabilizes, one should expect less and less changes, at least on usability or on user experience on our platform and on all of our products. So I think that's the biggest goal, that we have stable and consistent user experience across products and across projects, and that it stays stable over time. So just by following those principles that Lexicon provide, we hope to achieve that in our applications. And I just wanted to take the time to acknowledge the great team behind Lexicon. They're all based here in Spain, and I think none of them are now here at the office already, so they're probably enjoying the good weather out there. So if you see them around in events, or if you're nearby, just come say hi. You can meet Victor, Juan, Emiliano, Susana, and Durima. They're all great designers, and they're working really hard to make Lexicon a great tool that everyone can actually look for. So I hope this clarifies a little bit what Lexicon is. Again, Lexicon is just a set of principles, guidelines, just recommendations on how to build applications, how to build UIs. Okay, so it's not something you can use, it's something you either implement or follow, or it's something you adopt. So with that, what is Clay? So by renaming Clay, so in the past, we called this Lexicon CSS, as you saw in one of the previous slides. So now we've tried to this caused some confusion in the past. And that was that one of, can I use Lexicon already, or is it Lexicon ready? Does it have a bug? So by mixing the names of the guidelines and the implementation, we got ourselves into some confusion. So we've tried to rename it. So what Clay is what was previously known as Lexicon CSS. And what it is, it's a web implementation of the Lexicon Experience language. Same way with Lexicon, we have our own site for this that you can check. It's clayui.com. We're having right now some issues with our CDN that cache the wrong site, so it might not be functional at the moment. We're expecting maybe 1 or 2 hours until the cache goes out, or if we can flush it before. But if you navigate through it, you'll see a similar structure than the one in Lexicon. So we're trying to, I hope you can see the symmetry between our Lexicon site, which is the guideline site, and our Clay one, which is implementation. So we're trying to differentiate them to make sure everyone understands they're not the same thing, but at the same time, we're trying to keep them close together. So it's easy to link the connection between one and another. So for example, if you go later on, if you go to the site and then you're looking to understand how to do something on the Lexicon page, you can, for instance, go to the cards card site, and then it will be explained how to actually use cards. So you can see what's the meaning of a card, what's a card expected to do, and why, and in which scenarios it should apply, right? So this is the first step you need to do when you're designing your applications. You need to understand what's available for you as a pattern and where you can use it. Now, the moment you decide to use it, you can just go to the Clay implementation, which is we usually have the counterpart in Clay. And then, as you can see now, for a card, Clay actually shows you how to use it in different flavors, or how to actually make what Lexicon was telling you something that you can actually use in a website or in an application. So you can explore those two sites. Please let us know if there's anything that seems off. We're continuously working on improving. There's a lot of documentation coming our way, so it'll take some time until everything is stable, but we already have put a lot of documentation there that should be enough to get you started playing with both Lexicon and Clay. So just again, once more, Clay is the Liferay's, it's actually Liferay's web implementation of Lexicon. And it's a web implementation because it consists of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And it's just a set of actual components, real components that you can use. And it's important to say that we're calling this Liferay's web implementation. That means two things. One, that there could be another implementation, both maybe web implementation or mobile implementation or something else, right? So Clay is just one way in which we turned Lexicon ideas and Lexicon patterns into reality to use on the web. But it could be done in any other technology and in many different ways. And it's just the one we actually built. But anyone could actually do one for themselves, for the companies, or open source, which is the way we like. So the verb that would describe better what you can do with Clay, it's now use it. The same way you shouldn't or you couldn't use Lexicon, you should use Clay. You can use Clay. So Clay is a set of components that's available in web technologies and that can be used to build UIs. Right? So we are trying to make sure that Clay can be used anywhere, and that's somehow the goal of, or a little bit of the goal of this session, to show that it's not just internal usage that we want to promote, but any kind of usage. So we're going to try to show how you can use and how you can actually leverage Clay to bring the Lexicon experience language to any of your applications. And before going any further into this, there's one thing that is worth mentioning, is that Clay is, or at least it was conceived as something very opinionated, in a way that we didn't want to deviate much or allow a lot of room for improvisation over what Lexicon provides or what Lexicon expects. So in the past, the way we've built components or UI has always been in a very extendable way where everyone could do whatever they wanted. And that, of course, it's very nice because it's easier to use and change it for the things you want, and make it just behave and look the way you want. But at the same time, it actually opens the door to inconsistencies and problems and things that don't match what users expect, just because you gave so much freedom that the things are being used in a different way than the one you expected. And again, there's nothing wrong there. It's just a different set of problems that we've experienced over time. So with Clay, we try to close that gap or close that room for improvisation a little bit, and just try to be more opinionated on what a specific component could do and how it could be rendered, so that when you were using Clay, you would be almost sure that you would actually be implementing a proper, or you would be adhering to the proper lexicon patterns, and you couldn't get away from those and just make mistakes. So that's the original idea, or that was the original idea. We're seeing that there's still everyone still needs room for improvement or for change and to adapt. And Lexicon is evolving, Clay is evolving in the same way. So we're also trying to explore now how to extend both Lexicon and Clay so they can actually be customized to different experiences. So the same way, this is the team behind Clay. And now not everyone is here in Spain. We have Marcos, Carlos, and Julien here in Spain. But you can also see Matusalem from Brazil or Patrick in LA. So we're a very distributed team focused on getting and making Clay the best possible library for us. And just one last bit of theory here before we move into the real coding part of the presentation. So by now, I hope the distinction between Lexicon and Clay is clear. But the question remains is, what's in Clay? I mentioned it's a web implementation. It uses JavaScript, HTML, CSS. But what's really powering Clay underneath? And here's where those other words that we highlighted at the beginning come to play. So you can think of Clay as maybe as a big offering or a big bundle somehow, but with two different parts. And one is what we're calling Clay CSS, and another one is what we're calling Clay components. And Clay components is not just one thing, but a set of different components, like the ones you saw on the side, like a card, a table, a data set. There's different components that you will be able to use. So starting on CSS, because we want to be able to use Clay anywhere, we didn't want to link or to couple all our styling and the skinning you could do on the components with the real components, right? So because sometimes you actually don't want components, or you just want to render stuff very quickly. And by providing just a layer of CSS, then we can achieve that. So Clay CSS is based on Bootstrap 4.1 already, so which gives us the advantage that a lot of the markup out there, a lot of the things that agencies or consultants or your own developers know how to build, it works out of the box with Clay. And then on top of Bootstrap 4, we have some modifications, some variable changes, some extra styling that we apply, just so that everything is consistent for us. And then there's just one third layer on CSS that we're calling Atlas, or it can be seen as the skin level, right? So for now, we just have Atlas, which is our one and only and default and official skin. And that's the one that gives you that current lexicon look and feel. But we're exploring the possibility of building more. So you could actually, you could get both just the base styling, which would put things in order, is pretty much structural changes only. And then you can get different skins on top, which would just make things look different. So that's what Clay CSS is, and it's the one in charge of styling all of our components and somehow guiding what HTML you can use and how it should look like, so that it gets picked up by the CSS. Then on the other side, we have the components themselves, and these use a set of technologies. So Clay, all the Clay components are actually or are in fact Metal components. Metal.js, in case you guys don't know, it's another one of our projects. So I won't go into detail here because this session is not about Metal.js. But if you want to know more, there's the link at the beginning for the session about Metal.js, where you can where it's explained what it is and what's the meaning, and what were the goals that we had in mind when we when we had to implement it. And Metal.js is just a framework to build UI components. So it's a set of very simple JavaScript utilities and JavaScript functions that you often need when developing a front-end application, and a rendering layer for components. So there's no components inside Metal.js. It's just our framework or the base for our components, right? And that's why Metal.js is just right there at the bottom of our Clay components. So all of our Clay components leverage Metal, and then by doing that, just inherit all the benefits and all the good qualities that we have on the framework. And if you know a little bit about Metal.js, you know it allows for different templates to be used. So currently we support closure templates, or SOI, and JSX, the same template language as React uses. And for Clay, we're actually using closure templates. And closure templates, I'll go into more detail later, but they allow us to render on the server using Java. We currently can render both SOI and JSX with Node, so we have that possibility. But there's some stacks or some servers or some places where we cannot install or run a Node server, right? So for that and for our current stack, we needed something that could be used from Java directly, and that's what SOI templates give to us. And then on top, we just have some JavaScript and HTML. So in the end, we just have some components, the Metal components controlling what was actually the result or the output of the element or the component, which is the HTML defined by Clay before. And so hopefully everything will make a little bit more sense as we jump into code. Okay. So the first step is just, as I was saying, just basic rendering, basic HTML. So you can use they provide the HTML to just print stuff on your page. So the way you would usually do this. Sorry. Okay, so let's start here. I created just a very simple page. So there's nothing here. There's no build process of any kind. There's no npm. So I'm not requiring anything. So if you go to so all you need to start using Clay right now is just our provided CSS. And since we're publishing this as npm, so there's other ways to use it, and I'll show some more later in detail. I hope you can read this. Let me just. Okay. So as you can see, the only thing you need is a regular, good old HTML page where you can inject our CSS styles. And as I was saying at the beginning, Atlas is our main entry point. That's the skin that will make things look like you see on most of the screenshots. But you can also use our base CSS, which won't provide any styling. And I'll show you right now what this means and how it looks like. So in case you forget about this, if you go to the Clay site on introduction, here you can find just the same links that you need to copy paste to just get started. So for now, we're just focusing on CSS. We'll talk about JavaScript later. So all you need to do is, again, just copy and paste this link on your site. And with that, you just, well, right now you have nothing, right? But remember what we said was that Clay was using Bootstrap underneath. So the foundation was Bootstrap. And that, what gave us was the ability to just reuse any markup out there that we could already use. So let me go to this page that I already created. Okay. So right now it's just an empty page, right? So I'll just also comment these styles to see what effects this has on the page. And then I'll just go to Bootstrap here, examples for it. And then I'll just copy, let's say, one of these, maybe pricing. So many different ways to copy that you have to copy paste markup. I'll just be real fast here. So again, this is not a session about good practices, so don't take this as the way you should actually do front-end, but just so we don't lose time on other things. So I already just dropped a bunch of HTML that I found somewhere on my site, on my page. And then, of course, this just looks somewhere just like HTML, no styling applied. Nothing like where we came from on Bootstrap side, right? So the next thing I'll do is to just fetch my base CSS that's coming from Clay. So we have automatic CDNs for that, and we're also working on a custom CDN, so it's easier to remember. But you can use this for now. So the moment I actually drop my CSS, everything just changes. And now it's pretty much very close to what you could actually see on the Bootstrap page, right? So there's some differences on spacing, and but mostly things just look well and things just work. So that's the first level. That's, as I was saying, the base CSS. And now if we actually go and open another one, now using Atlas, now you can see the differences, right? So this is just with base applied, and this is with Atlas, which is our custom or our current skin, the official one. And Atlas brings some enhancements suggested by Lexicon on spacing, font sizing, color contrast, on different color palettes, so that it actually achieves some of the goals. And just to show you what I mean by those is that if you go to Lexicon, for example, they have a different set of primary colors and how they can change, the ones you can use, and then also which ones are secondary. So they've all been tested for accessibility on different scenarios. So that's what Atlas brings you over just pure base, which is just some changes on top of Bootstrap. So there, in just 1 second, I was able to get just a page working. right? A static one, where I could just change things now and just make it look the way I want, and then I'll be done for the day. So just think about that. Same way Bootstrap helped us get this done very quickly. Clay is just adding an extra, just like the cherry on top, so that things, just correcting some of the things that we've experienced or we've seen over the past. And that goes for Bootstrap, so you can use pretty much any HTML out there with Clay, and it should look well. And then now I'm going to show how you would actually go implementing just the HTML section or the HTML part of an application using Clay. So I'm starting at the same with an empty HTML, the same way. I'm already going to be using Atlas, so that we can make the switch later to see. And then this in a very similar way that the way we do with Bootstrap, we can do with Clay, with the difference that we may not even have to copy paste from the developer tools. We can just go to the site. Let's say I want to add, I want to do some kind of application where I know I want to do a header. So here next to the component, you can just have you can see just the code that you need. So just by clicking on copying and pasting it, then let me go to my site. So again, I just copy pasted some HTML, and there you have the header, right? If you need to keep going and find some other things after, I know, because if you dig through the lexicon side, you'll know that after the header, usually you get a management toolbar, which lets you do operations on the set of items or elements you have. And here we see we have different flavors of components, or different ways we can actually get this. But for now, we'll stick to HTML, right? So I'll just, here I have two of them, so I'll just copy the first one. So again, I'm just copy pasting blindly some of the markup out there. And then after the toolbar, well, I know I usually have some navigation, maybe breadcrumbs. Okay. So yeah, I know they look like this somehow. So I'll just copy this markup, add it to my HTML. And then the last thing, it's going to be probably some kind of list of things I want to show, and then I want to act on, because this is some kind of admin app. So again, different flavors. I'll just stick to HTML for now and copy. So I expect to have something like this show up in my app at some point. So I just copied 3 or 4 just pieces that I could find on the Clay site. And then when I go back to my page, I just refresh. Now I have a full application just put together in very little time. So that's the first step we see as being more productive across the board. Of course, this is a very low-level abstraction, right? But this is the basic the base for higher abstractions, where you can actually put this into different containers or different boxes, so that then they can be reused. So because we don't really expect many people going and just copying HTML, but again, it's just something like a reference you could use to build your own abstractions on top, and depending on the different needs of your teams. And again, just to make the distinction clear, if I just remove the Atlas portion and then just use the baseline or the base CSS, now the difference is even more clear on what happens on just the default markup. So this is still this still has something on top of Bootstrap, right? It's not 100%. I mean, it's clearly off. Some things like the selected might not be the thing you expect, but it's mostly functional, so you can use it as a base. And we'll see later in the next section how you can start from here to make your own skin or your own experience. So that's all I have for this part. So now you can see how easy it is to just get some HTML, drop in some CSS, and then just find the patterns you need to use and just apply them to your site. So imagine how fast and how easy it can be to just create some of those static sites with either with any of the pieces that are already provided. Oops. Okay. I promise you this was not a joke. The style was meant to be in the same line. So this is not CSS acting up here, but I guess it serves it doubles as a joke too. Okay, so we've seen that by default we provide a very opinionated CSS, which in my opinion looks very well, and it's very well thought out. But there's always something you want to change or you want to adapt for your needs, right? So for that, the CSS layer provides a very attractive or very powerful extension point using Sass. All the source code is written in Sass and it's available via the npm module. So you can actually use it to create your own version or your own skin. And the way you would do this is very simple. And then I'll try to do this live now. Let me check. Okay, so now I have here a very simple project. In this case, it has a package JSON because I'm going to be compiling Sass. I haven't added anything else, anything fancier than that. So I'm just trying to get some CSS, sorry, some Sass. Here I have some Sass that I'm compiling, right? And then I'm just dropping the result on my main CSS here, which right now it's empty, right? And then I have a page. In this case, I copied the contents from Bootstrap again. I think it's checkout page, right? So again, I came to Bootstrap just so this form that I really liked, and then I just dropped it into my page, and then the current result is this one. Okay, so no CSS applied, no Bootstrap, no nothing. It's just a form in HTML, right? So the next thing I'll do, well, I know I already have Sass here, right? So I can actually just change things to something that's maybe not, something more interesting than changing just background color to some kind of pink. But if I were to do that, right, and then just update my CSS, compile my Sass, there it is. It's just a minor, very simple change that I can get in there in a very short amount of time. So the next thing, of course, this is not very useful. There's still a lot of things I need to do to make this site actually look like anything of the one we saw on the Bootstrap page. So what I could do is just install base CSS, and then just by doing that, what I got were all the sources of our code. So now on my package JSON, I already got the Clay CSS dependencies. We just released 2.0 yesterday, just for you. So just for this event. So it's already out of release candidate and into stable channel. So you can just go ahead and use it. And then from there, I'll just copy from here so that I don't make any mistakes. So the only thing I need to make sure that I can use it is just tell Node where are my folders. So where are my sources? So now, so now Sass will know that there's something that you can use in here, which is the module that you just downloaded. If you're using other bundlers, more sophisticated build systems, this is actually easier to achieve, but this is just for demo purposes here. So what you can do now, let's just remove this, and then you can just import, let's say, base, which was, again, our main entry point with no extra styling applied. So if I do that, and then I just, again, oops, sorry, and then I just compile my Sass again, now I have something very close to what I already saw on the Bootstrap side, and that's what I would expect, right? That's pretty much what we had in the previous section, just some CSS and some HTML. The difference now, and of course I can also use Atlas. And by using Atlas, my form will just change in a similar ways to the other changes. So this is actually more closely following the lexicon patterns. So the difference, as I was saying, the difference with what we had before is that now we have a place where we can actually change it. We can actually customize the CSS, the styling we're seeing. And before, we were just importing some CSS, and you could, of course, override on top. But every front end, or everyone has heard of how crazy it gets when you're trying to just handle CSS. So Sass brings some good alternatives or good options to manage that. So I could just create a variables file. So this is we're working on, but Bootstrap is heavily based on variables. So you can just customize variables and then make things look in a different way. And the same way, Clay just builds on top, and then both uses all of Bootstrap for variables power and adds even some more, so you can have even more customizing power. So I'll just, again, copy some of these here so that I don't make mistakes and lose some time. So things that you could do on your variables file is just overriding the primary color, the success color, maybe the danger color, right? So if you check the HTML, this button is actually primary, right? And that's just what's giving it that bluish color. And I think this would be probably success, right? And then this is just coming from the default skin, which is Atlas. So if I apply my changes and then I rebuild my CSS now with my different variables changed, as you can see, I just had the same. So I have the same skin, and the only difference is that now I have the primary and the success colors switched just by changing it, or just by adjusting it here. So if I want to go back to some kind of blue, then I can just do this again, compile, and then my button is now a different shade of blue. So it's very easy to customize on top of Atlas. So you on top of Atlas, on top of Clay. So you have a very solid basic to just build any type of skin or of theme that you might want to. And here I'm overriding with, so I'm building with Atlas, but you could build with base, and it will just be slightly different depending on what you're overriding or not. So with this, I was hoping to show, or to show how easy it is to also make customizations on top. You don't need any library specific knowledge or any almost any framework specific knowledge. It's just some pure Sass that you can use, reuse, and change any way you need. We're working on documenting all the variables out there and even automating that so that it's easier to know what you can actually change. But just so that you can see what you can achieve with it, I'll just here Patrick just built in some time some overrides that would give you UI kit look and feel. So just by applying variable changes, we managed to make Clay look like something like this, which is a different CSS framework that you can use. So if you, I'll just show here. So I just copy this variable. So this is not a small set of variables for sure. So you need to have a lot of knowledge on what you need to actually adapt. And again, we're working on making that even simpler, but just so that you can see the full extent of what can be achieved with this. So now I applied all those overrides on top, and as you see now, the site looks completely different, and it actually matches that UI kit styling that was provided, that's closer to what material design expects. So it's very easy to just start with a framework, start with the CSS, and then just override some things to get them to look completely different. So that would, let's say, that would close the section on the most basic levels. So we have, again, HTML and CSS that you can just simply reuse on any old or any standard HTML page that you need. And with very little effort, you can actually rebuild and create your own modifications or your own schemes. And then now we move on to some more maybe complex scenarios. And I won't get into detail today about Soy. As I mentioned before, you can use Soy to render on the server using Java. So the idea of Metal is that it can be used to create isomorphic components that can be rendered on any server technology, and that can be done through Node. So we can render both Soy and JSX on Node. So there's no problem on that. But if you need to run Java, well, you have two options. You can run, if you want to render your templates on the server and provide them pre-rendered to the client. So they're not just JavaScript running on the client. You need some way to render those templates. And in Java, you can do through natural now. I mean, you could actually get JavaScript running, but it might not be the most efficient way. And what Soy provides us is a way to actually render the template purely in Java, and in a way that it compiles to very performant code on the server that can be leveraged. So if you check on the website, that was the other flavor that you could see at the beginning, which is Soy. It just shows how you would use this from a Soy template. If you're curious, there's some link to in the slide about the stack of Clay or how it was built. There's some links to Clojure templates where you can actually learn more about this technology and how to set it up and what options are there. But in essence, it just gives you a way to render templates, right? So here we're just saying, I want to render the Clay alert render template passing these params. And the nice thing about it is that this will be used both for the Java, for the server side, and on the client side, just reusing the same template. So you don't have to actually, if you remember in the past, we had to write different implementations. Let's say if you had something rendering on the server that you wanted to re-render on the client, then you would need to actually get the same template on the client again, right? So now you can just have one template where all your rendering logic sits, and it's just rendering, so you cannot inject any kind of logic, because of course you would need to run both on the server and the client on the same way. And so again, if you want to know more about this, just check the links. It's very interesting technology that we are using on the portal side to make sure that we can keep that all server-side rendering and progressive enhancement on our platform. And as we'll see later, this is not preventing us from actually reusing Clay components in different ways. And then we'll see why later on. But first, I wanted to move on to the JavaScript side of things. So we showed HTML, CSS, and of course the third main actor on the web platform is JavaScript, and it's getting, well, we all know, more and more popular over time. So Clay also leverages very nice features through Metal.js, which is the underlying framework. It provides us with very interesting things that we can do. So every component, what we saw, it has HTML and CSS, and then you can just render stuff. But we also have JavaScript components, so you can actually instantiate objects or components that you can use to both render and then to control, to listen to events, to interact with them. And I'll show you an example now. So now we move to JavaScript. So now the projects become a little bit more complicated, but if you're familiar with JavaScript, there's not that much going on here. Anyways, just a good webpack config, creating a bundle for me, and then I just have here some HTML demos as well. So the difference now is, so now I'm getting Atlas from a local build I have here, and then I'm also getting my my build of this component in particular. So for the demo, what I want you guys to look at is just that. So right now I don't have HTML, but I'm fetching some data I have here on a JSON file, and then I'm just passing it to my component when I instantiate it. And I'm saying I want this to be rendered on the container element, which it's here, here at the top. Okay, so with this, I expect to just render, well, if you look a little bit of at the API, it's saying just I'm rendering a table with a set of items, which should follow a schema, which I can explain later, and then it has other params, right? So if I go there, so this is the end result. It's just, it might not look as like much at first. So let's go through it in more detail. So here I have a JSON file with data. Right? It's just a list of items, and they have like different subgroups, and then each group has some items, and then each item has some properties. Right? And then what I'm doing is just reading that JSON file and then printing those items basically in a table. And then the way I know the component knows what to render is through this schema attribute, which is saying which fields I have. And then it's just saying, okay, I want to render this number of fields which should map to these properties on the items, and then they should have this number of options. So the good thing about this is that you don't have to care about any markup. You don't have to go look for markup in some page and then build it or string it together and look through your items and figure out how to put all that together, because the component will do that for you. And then it will give you this very nice table that does exactly what you expect. So since we're on the JavaScript side, then we're going to open the console now to see which things we could do with it. And here I just assigned this to the Clay table global variable so I could inspect it, right? So what you see is just a component that has some methods and some attributes that are available for you to explore. So for instance, we know we passed some items, right? And again, these have no knowledge at all about HTML. They're just a pure model that you can use to render. So we can see here the groups of items. Sorry, I'll make this bigger. Right, so you can see here the group of items, and you can see other properties of the table, like for instance, selectable that we set to true on our demo, right? So as a value. So one of the first things you can see about this is that you can interact with the component just by changing properties in the component. So if I would set selectable to false, what happens is that the component actually automatically re-renders because it knows how to render. Now it removes the checkboxes on the left side. If you set selectable to true, then automatically adjust for that. And at this moment, I wanted to take a moment to also show some of the things we're working on to make these things easier. So we've developed a Metal.js DevTools extension, similar to if you've worked with React to React DevTools, where you can actually see the components you've rendered. Like here, we know we have a table, and then some other components we're rendering inside. And then here you can see the state of your component, and you can actually change things from outside and just see them react in real time. And this is this does not only apply to just those values, but also to let's say the items. So here I know I have a group that's called folders, so I'll just call it dev.life, right? And then I can see how everything is just re-rendering. I'm doing nothing here other than just changing or adjusting my model. And then I know the first item here, the name, I don't want it to be photos, but I want to be Clay. It's awesome. And then just by doing that, things just refreshed automatically for you. So you can imagine how easy it is to do some changes or some re-renders, how you can actually rethink the way you're approaching, or we are approaching, some operations on the UI side, because you no longer need to keep track of how the markup is built or how this is actually built on HTML, because you don't have to care about that. You just need to care about your data. And that makes it very powerful, and that makes things very simple to change in the future. The same way I'm just changing things here, I could do, so I'll just get my items, and then I'll just push another one. And then when I assign my items again to the table, because I need to, the component, that's where the component will know that my items changed, automatically something else got added here, which of course is not following the right schema, but you already got a new table here, and it automatically rendered, and I didn't have to tell him or tell the component that it should add a new list item or a new table row or anything. So it's very easy to actually change things here. And you can imagine more complex operations. If you've ever worked with tables and you've tried to implement drag and drop of a column, right? Or filtering, removing different columns. So because now the component is modeled, you can just see how, and this is controlled by the schema, the schema field of the component. So if I again store my schema so that I can do some modifications on it. Sorry. So I can see here that the schema is defining an array of fields, which is what I'm seeing rendered on the table, right? Like the name, origin, time, spicy level, because I think it was about food, download, and difficulty, right? So those are mapping here, and that's the data I'm seeing from the items I receive. Then each one of the fields have a name, a label, which is what you see on top, and then different attributes. So, for instance, I could change the field name, which is what from the item is going to be picked to be rendered here. So imagine I do on the first field, rather than showing the name, I want to show the ID, which if you check on my JSON file, is just a number. So if I assign my schema again, just because I changed my schema, and now I said that I want to fetch the data for the first field from the field name ID. Now everything just re-rendered. And the nice thing is that if you see this changing, like when I'm doing just manual changes, only the things that change are actually re-rendered. So let me show again, maybe with the console. So if I'm going to a specific item and then just changing again the name, but you can see that, oh, sorry, this was, okay, I changed the, sorry. I'll change my schema again, name, okay. And then if I just change all my items on the first one, let's say dev.life. As you can see, only the header was repainted, and that's making it very performant on the client side. So you can rest assured that you can apply any changes that come your way, because only the necessary parts of your UI are going to be refreshed. And this is done internally under the hood by incremental DOM. So Metal.js uses incremental DOM from Google instead of virtual DOM like React does, to actually handle all the updates on the markup level, on the HTML level. And just to finish with this one, as I was saying at the beginning, imagine more complex operations like dragging and dropping or reordering columns. So that's usually very complicated thing to do, right? But now, because our component is modeled, we have the option of doing that just on a code level, on a model level, right? So what this means is that we have a list of fields, and then what we want to do is just make sure, or we want to make the origin column show after the time one, right? So a very naive way to do that would be to say that I want my fields to be an array with first one, copy this one. Then rather than the second one, I want to just swap the second one on the second one on the third one. So I'll just swap those and then keep the other ones. Very, I think I missed one, but now I see that time shows before origin on my array. I still haven't refreshed the component, so you would never do this like the way I'm coding it here, but just for demo purposes again. So you see that now when the component refreshes, time is going to show before origin. So imagine if you're doing this live, like you're actually dragging something, some kind of placeholder from time to origin, right? So you're giving some visual cue of what's going to happen, but you don't need to deal with any markup yet. And the moment you drop that pointer, then you just do this line here in a more beautiful way, probably, right? You just swap two items in an array. That's all you do, swap two items. And then the moment the component refreshes again, and then I'll just apply the schema, you'll see how time and origin just got swapped. And also because I forgot to add something got removed. So that would be also how to implement a filter. You just need to remove an item in an array. And that's how easy it is to actually use JavaScript components and think about them and implement different complex scenarios, or the things that were very difficult before now becomes so much more simpler when you just think about it in terms of data. So just keep this in mind, because it's a very time saver. It's a very good time saver for us, and it makes building very complex applications very easy when you don't have to think about the underlying HTML infrastructure. And this is done internally by Metal.js. So all these updates are handled internally, so you don't have to think about them. And they work both for Soy and JS. Remember that we are using Soy closure templates in Clay. But if you've worked with React, you can see that these patterns and these ideas are pretty much the same as the ones you can find in React. So making this change or making the jump from one to another is not hard at all. Okay, and I think we're running, well, not out of time, but I think it's already, it's been already a good session. So I just wanted to close with what I know Milen is more excited about, which is web components. So as I said at the beginning, our goal with Clay was that it could be used anywhere. And for that, we are documenting very heavily the HTML that you can use with the CSS that you can customize. We're making sure that this can be used on different stacks, technological stacks that may not be front of the line like Node that we have today in some scenarios. And we want to make sure that you can just use them as regular JavaScript from anywhere in your projects. So you don't, it doesn't really matter that Soy is underneath or Metal is working in there. As long as you can import it and just run it, it just works, and then you just get components. But we didn't want to leave without trying to leverage the last of the most powerful web standards that are coming our way, which is web components. And a while ago, and this is not Clay per se, but this is a feature that's coming from Metal.js itself too, which allows for every component to automatically register a web component. So that means that no matter what happens or no matter how it is built, you can actually use it as if it was just pure HTML. And here's just an example. If you go to the site, and that was the third, that was actually the second tab on our code snippets. Remember, we had HTML, we had Soy, and then we also have web components. And in web components, you can just copy. This is just pure HTML that you can add on any HTML page as well. So for the demo, we'll just I just have here this last page, a demo page here, where again I have my Atlas CSS, which is going to make them look beautiful. And then now we just need to inject our JavaScript files. So we're also providing, this is all Clay bundle, so it might be bigger than what you might need. So we're working on allowing different builds, but you can also build it yourself and bundle it if you're using Webpack, Rollup, or any bundler out there. So there's no need to use this, but if you need to just quickly jump into it, you can just import it, and then you'll have everything that Clay has to offer on the JavaScript side. And once you do that, what you can do is just come here on the site, and then in this case, just copy one of, copy one of these. Let's see which one. I'll just copy this one. Oh, this one. So you can just copy one of these examples here, and then just drop it there. So I'm just writing HTML, right? And I have an issue here. Oh, style can be. Okay, so I just dropped some HTML here. Sorry, right? It's just saying I want to render an alert that can be closed and has this message, and it's using this primap. It's also in CDN. I won't change it now, so you can actually either host it or change it, or use our CDN one, and then it has a title. So right now I'm just writing HTML, which under the hood is going to leverage all the web components, different standards, different specs to render a component for you. So if we go to this last demo now, then I go to standalone. So just by saying that I want to render a Clay alert, and then the title is to be success, then I already have that on my page. And yeah, and so I can just adjust what shows there. This is information alert, right? So I'm just writing HTML right now, and the title would be info. So I can just pretty much write HTML, and everything works for me. Works for me there, and I can keep doing that for others. Like, let's say maybe I want to also add a card, which is maybe a more complex one. So I'll just take this one, and then again the code is here. And if you look at it, it's just HTML. You're just setting attributes to an HTML tag. And we've been doing this for years, right? So there's nothing magic about this, just adding a tag and then setting some attributes on it. So now I have also a card. The image is not showing because it's not here, of course. And I can just keep adding more and more of this. I could add, I don't know, maybe management toolbar could be one too. Just too big, maybe. Let's see. I'll just add some progress bars here. So this one we didn't see before. It's just progress bars. So again, you have HTML, which tends to get big, right? But if you move to web components arena, it just boils down to 1 or 2 lines of actual real HTML that you can write. So just saying what I have, and then just by doing that, I have a progress bar on my page. And there's some cool things about this that are important. And one is that these are real components. These are real HTML tags. So you can see them here rendered on your HTML page. So with all their attributes. And one of the nice things is that you can actually change. So if you change them, if you change the message attribute on this alert, something else, it automatically shows, it reflects on the component. So the component under the hood is re-rendering and updating itself on attribute changes, right? And the same for, let's say, the progress bar. It has value 70, but I want to update it to 90. So just by changing the attribute, it would automatically update and it would behave internally. So from the outside world, you don't know what's going on, right? You just know that you're changing some attribute on some tag. And it's not only that, but you can also edit this from JavaScript. So let's say you have a progress bar, right? And then I just gave it an ID. So I know how to actually get this progress bar. Okay, so now I have the instance of my progress bar, and then I can also just change attributes like value, and then I can say to something else. And right now, again, I'm just working with a model. So I'm just saying, okay, I want value to be a different, I want to change the attribute value to something else. And then the component is just reacting. So it's very easy to actually glue these things together and make them behave in different ways and make them do what you want without having to overcomplicate your pages or your UIs. So we're very excited about web components. Still some things to iron out, some quirks out there, and support for browser support is still not out there yet. So it might still take some time before you can comfortably use them without actually bringing in other polyfills or being concerned about browser support. But we think it's a very good move forward, and it's going to be probably one of the ways we're going to be developing UIs in the future. So we're investing on making sure that every Clay component it's automatically exposed as a web component. And in case this wasn't enough, what I showed right now. Another good benefit of web components is interoperability. And because if you've been following closely, probably the moment we mentioned soy templates, closure templates or soy, probably some questions or some concerns should have been raised, right? Like, okay, but how can I use this from somewhere else? It's definitely a different technology, so it's going to cause different problems, right? And that's totally true. And that's where web components come to help us there, because web component is a web standard, and then it's based on on several different specifications that get implemented. But what it means is it runs everywhere, and then you can reuse them. And what I want to show with this is that you can actually use Clay in different frameworks today using the web component layer. So I'll just show real quick. Here I have a React app. Okay, let me just start it real quick. This is just a pure React app with a normal setup. There's nothing specific for Clay here. And then, well, it has really just some buttons here, updating a counter there. But if you look under the hood, if you look at how this is built, well, again, this is just a React application. So if you go to the JavaScript and then you go to where we're rendering, what we're saying now is, well, because I know I want to use Clay batch and Clay button, I'll just import them. So I have them here in my dependencies, right? So I know I want to use some components from Clay. So I'll just add them to my dependencies, and then I'll just say I need them on my app. So when I go to render, the only thing I need is to actually use the web component, use the tag, the generated tag for it. And so what you're seeing here are actual Clay components being rendered from React. And we didn't have to do anything special. We didn't have to do anything out of the ordinary. As you can see, clicks are working, event listeners are working, and then when you update the value of label in the batch, because of that property we saw of the components, then it just re-renders automatically. And then I just show the view 1, 2, because in this case, Matusalem did for me. So I'm really grateful that he put in this time in building these demos for me and for you guys. So it's the same demo. In this case, it's powered by Vue.js, and it's just a regular Vue.js application. Again, I'm adding my Clay dependencies, and then I'm just making sure that, and then I'm just using them on my template. And because this is pure HTML, it just works on any template, on anywhere that it understands HTML, you can use Clay components out of the box. So hopefully with time, we hope to get some adoption there. It's very easy to actually mix. So you're not necessarily locked to any given technology, but you can still keep using these components anywhere in your projects. So we think this is going to be it's a very nice addition. Again, still some quirks to iron out, but we're going to be working on those. Okay, and just to finish up, I think it's been more than I expected. So just to finish up, just very small or brief glimpse on what we're planning to do for the future. So we want to invest heavily on the next months on developer experience. That means creating more documentation for this, examples generators, so you get scaffolding right out of the box really fast, and you can just get working. We're planning, as I said, to build some graphic UI or some way to customize Clay CSS, so you can just see a list of all the variables, and then you can just tweak their values and then get even a compiled CSS version of that. So we're going to invest heavily on developer experience, and on more of the internal side, we'll keep adding some more components that we're missing from Lexicon. So we want to have, if not a one-to-one map, close to one-to-one. So everything that you can find, or everything that gets outlined in Lexicon, you can find in Clay. And we are also exploring, as I said, how to make this more extensible, or how to leverage the full power, so you can actually compose and extend the out-of-the-box components. And last thing we want to explore, if you've been following Liferay also for the last year and a half, we're investing heavily on APIs, and we believe we're making a good, or we're putting a lot of effort into making sure that our projects, our platform can be used as a headless, and then you can just connect from everywhere. And in that arena, hypermedia IPAs is something we're exploring a lot. I just encourage you to go read a little bit about this if this is the first time you hear about hypermedia APIs and our Appio project, which is actually is the one helping us build those APIs. And what we want to do on the Clay side here on the components is to make sure is to try to provide connected components. So it's to try to provide some intelligence to the components, so you can just say, in the example of the table I showed, rather than having to actually fetch the data and then figure out if you have, let's say, pagination, right? So you would need to do those things manually. So the idea is that you could just say, hey, this is my table, and then this is my data provider, which is this hypermedia API, which I connect to. And then just by doing that, you automatically would get pagination, URLs, navigation, all the items, what needs to be rendered and how. So we think that's also it's going to give us a very a productivity boost there. And it's going to be a very nice way to develop in the future. So we're going to be exploring that also very, very soon. And I think that's all I have for today. I hope it wasn't too boring, and I hope you find it interesting. So I guess now we have some time for questions. But if not, you can just ping me on Twitter. That's my handle, or find me on the Slack channel where I'll be around. So back to you, Milan.
All right, thank you, Chema. That was a great session. And we do have some questions, which I think you can see on the Slack. I'm just going to ask them to you anyways. Okay. Let's start with, can I use Clay in 7.0 Liferay portal C, I assume? In other words, is there a safe way to create a team that can only use Clay components compatible with Liferay 7.0?
Okay, so Liferay 7.0 uses Bootstrap 3, okay, and Clay and Liferay 7.1 will use Bootstrap 4. So there's going to be, it's definitely doable. For Liferay 7.1, we actually built a compatible layer, or we're trying to build a compatible layer so that you can actually use them on top of Bootstrap 3. So it might be doable, but it's not in our roadmap at this point. So I don't have a certain answer on how hard could it be. So it's not something we are going to be investing, or at least it's not in our plans. It should be doable, but it might be, I would say, of medium complexity. I wouldn't say it would be totally easy, to be honest. But it should be doable. And if you just drop the CSS and the JavaScript, and then you have let's say, if you have a clean theme, and you're not using most of the, let's say, the out-of-the-box features. So if you're doing something like a public-facing theme or a site, then probably you don't need most of the stuff that comes out of the box. So in those cases, it would be easier. When you need to interact with existing code and existing components, I would expect some side effects, right? So it might not be as simple as that.
Right. Yeah. From my own experience, quite a few things from what was known before as Lexicon CSS are not that far away in terms of look and feel from Clay, but obviously you don't get all the goodies of Clay for free with those. Okay, so I think that partly answers the next question, which is, will Clay 2.0 be stable when Liferay CE 7.1 is released?
Yes.
I think you mentioned that it was already released, right?
Yeah, so we released 2.0 yesterday. So it's been pretty stable for the last 2 months. We've been a release candidate. We haven't introduced any, I think just a couple of necessary breaking changes that came from Bootstrap update to 4.1, but that was it. So it's been pretty stable for a while, and we just released 2.0, so we can actually iterate on that before the release of 7.1. So we expect 7.1 to ship something like Clay 2.1 or 2.2. So we are going to add some extra features, but from now on till release, we're going to be focusing, as I said, on stability, bug fixing, and documentation. So yeah, it will be stable. It already is, but it will be even more by the time we release.
Super cool. By the way, Jacopo, if you're still with us, you said your question has received an answer. I'm not quite sure what you mean. If you still have questions, please repost it. Moving back to, will the code you showed in the demo be available somewhere, for example, GitHub or?
Yeah, I'll push to a repo later and add the link here on the slides, which I guess will be available on the Meetup channel, right, Milan?
Right. We'll make the slides available for everyone as well, which I think answers the Jack's questions, where I will find links to a learning resource mentioned in presentation. So if there is something missing, I think we're just going to make it a new URL and then publish the slides so you all can make it to them.
Yeah, I'll make both available soon.
All right. So yes, to make it clear, both the slides and the code will be available for you guys.
Correct.
Anything else? It's your last chance to ask questions while we are still live.
I see one. I see one here from Dennis. I don't know if it's been. Will be available a sketch file for Lexicon 2.0.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I missed that one. Yes,
okay.
I apologize, Dan.
No, that's fine. So for this, I'll need to actually get back to you. So this is on the Lexicon team. So it's Victor to answer. I've heard talks about this internally. So I think there might be, but I think they were using different. So they were exploring different products at the time. So I'm not sure if Sketch would be the one or the one they use or the one they'll expose. I think my answer would be maybe, but they will know more. So I would recommend maybe making this question in the Lexicon channel there here in Slack, and I'm sure mentioning Victor Victor Valle, and then I'm sure he'll be able to give you a more detailed answer on this.
Yes, that was exactly what I was gonna say as a general note, that we still have like I don't know, maybe 30 seconds to see if another question pops up. But even if you don't manage to get your questions now answered, there is obviously the channels for Clay and for Lexicon on the community Slack, and I think we have a more generic channel for teams and front end. There's a number of different ways. We still use forums. So if you have more complex questions, please use the forums and then just put a link to the forum post on Slack. So there's a number of different ways to reach us, to reach Chema, to reach the other team members. They will get they will get to answer your questions. Please tell me you didn't use Adobe to develop the Lexicon design system. them?
I don't know.
Adobe XD. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Now, guys, you need to excuse me. My front-end knowledge is very limited. So if you use fancy front-end things, I hope Chema understands this because I don't get them all. I honestly don't know.
I don't think they. I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're using Sketch and in Visio. I don't know to what extent my design skills are not that good either. So, but I'm pretty sure they didn't use Adobe XD. But again, just ping them on the Lexicon channel. They'll be able to put that to rest.
Right. That's super cool. Like I'm super excited about web components thing, obviously. And once you make that integration with Appio, so that I can just place a web component and I say, here is my data source, I will be personally the happiest person on earth as far as front end is concerned. So thank you very much, Chema. It was a great session. I personally enjoyed it very much. I hope everyone else did as well. You know where to address your questions. And I have an announcement to make, which is about the next session. And for this, I need to switch back to my screen. And okay, here we go. The next session is modular and configurable JAX-RS applications secured with OAuth 2. Now, that's a totally different story from front-end, and I do get those who joined us today for the sole purpose of CSS and Bootstrap may not be interested in that, but if you are a Java developer, a backend Java developer, I can assure you this is going to be a very, very interesting session. That's going to be on May 23rd. We're going to have a little bit longer break this time. As you may know, May is a conference season, which means a lot of us get to travel to events a lot. And I personally have to go to several events. And all the Fridays, as it turns out in May, for me, are busy. So we had to move this to the second most popular day in the survey, which is Wednesday. So May 23rd, JAX-RS, OAuth 2, and Carlos Sierra. I'll see you then. Thank you very, very much for joining us today. Thank you, Chema, for providing such a great session. Everyone, take care. Enjoy the good weather, hopefully in wherever you are, and see you next time. Bye.